Hello and welcome to the course Climate Hazards and Disaster Mitigation. Today we are going to provide a summary of disaster management and risk reduction. So what have we learned so far? We explored the science policy interface for disaster mitigation. We appreciated the concept of disaster risk reduction and the key economic impacts of disasters, and we also discussed the key aspects of emergency and humanitarian response with relevant case studies. So our learning objectives for today are: we'll understand the connection between the science and policy in disaster management. We'll discuss the concept, components and key frameworks of disaster risk reduction. We'll appreciate the economic aspects of disasters, and we'll discuss the mechanisms for emergency and humanitarian response during different phases of a disaster. So to begin with, let us understand the difference between disaster mitigation and disaster management. So disaster mitigation involves long-term structural and non-structural actions taken before a disaster to reduce its impact and severity. For example, there can be building codes or provisions, then land use, zoning and planning, so that can be thought of before a disaster happens. Example are retrofitting buildings, building flood walls, enacting zoning laws, etc. Now disaster management is a broader comprehensive cycle of 5 phases. First is prevention, second is mitigation, third is preparedness, fourth is response, and fifth is recovery, to designed to handle the entire life cycle of an emergency. So we can say that in a way disaster mitigation is a subset of disaster management, where management provides a very comprehensive overview of all these 5 key areas. Examples can be setting up early warning systems, search and rescue operations, providing emergency shelter, and rebuilding the infrastructure. Now let us understand the science behind disaster mitigation, how science can help us. Now science can help us identify the high risk areas using the relevant data which are more prone to hazards. They can also use the weather data and sensors to provide early warnings in a particular area. Now these warnings can be disseminated either through news articles or news bulletins or even on our mobile. Next is remote sensing and GIS. It monitors the disasters and landscape through satellite and drone data. So which area is more flooded, or which area is more devastated, where emergency help is required, so that can be monitored, where human interaction is not possible. And also it can model and the different scenarios and assess potential impacts and risk, that which area is more prone to risk, that can be identified very easily. So this is all due to the advances in science. Now role of science and technology, as discussed earlier, that we can identify risk, also provide timely alerts through early warning system. We can simulate scenarios and have more modeling outcomes, and we can use innovate by using newer technologies for disaster management, and that can provide relief and rescue operation without much delay that can be thought of. Now scientific research in case of disaster management may include fields like seismology, that is pertaining to earthquake; meteorology, due to that is climate, the climatic parameters like rainfall, temperature, cloudburst, etc. Hydrology pertaining to stream flow; and engineering to provide foundational knowledge to understand natural hazards. Now the scientists collect data, develop models, forecast event, and assess the vulnerability. So this provides us evidence on which our policies can be based for effective disaster mitigation. So what is the next step? So the policies will turn this evidence, scientific evidence, into action. So policy makers at local, national and international levels will use this scientific evidence to formulate and implement strategies to reduce disasters and protect the communities. Now science policy interface is very important. What is the role of policy? It provides governance, mandates and resources necessary to effectively implement the science findings. So your frameworks and mandates, institutional structures, resource allocation and standardization is one of the main aspect. The science policy interface, where there is an interaction between the two domains, because it is essential. Otherwise if science is not translated into policy, there is no meaning of science, and if your policies are not based on scientific findings, then policies may not be long term effective. So that is why this interface is very important, because they help for knowledge transfer, they communicate with each other, and they reduce the institutional gaps. Other core reasons for integration can be, we can have informed decision making using the evidence we have. We could have improved effectiveness and outcomes of our decisions. We can solve complex issues using this integration. We can enhance public welfare and safety. Our resources can be optimally utilized. We can build more trust and legitimacy, because our, let us say if we have a warning, tomorrow there is a cyclone warning is there, and if it is not true, people will not build trust that okay, these people are disseminating false warning. So we should have a very strengthen our scientific database, and based on that we can provide more robust warnings. It will help us in long term adaptation and planning, and that is why this integration is very important. Coming to the next part, that is disaster risk reduction. So DRR is a concept and practice that involves reducing the disaster risk through systematic efforts, analyzing and managing the causal factors of these disasters. So the components of DRR, they include risk assessment, early warning system, preparedness planning, infrastructure and building standards, community engagement and education, and environmental management. So these are the key components. And the theoretical framework, it started with the Hyogo framework, then we have the Sendai framework, then you have the Sustainable Development Goals. So there are 17 SDGs and Paris Agreement. So like that there are different summits which define the targets, and 10 essentials for city resilience. So these are some theoretical frameworks which are there for DRR. Talking about the main components of DRR, so risk assessment is very important because it helps us identify hazards, exposure, vulnerability and capacity to a particular disaster. It uses tools like GIS, hazard mapping and data analysis to be more precise, and it will help us prioritize high risk areas and population. Prevention and mitigation, so it aims to avoid disasters or reduce their impact. It includes structural measures like resilient infrastructure, developing flood defenses, and non-structural measures like formulating policies, land use zoning, and modifying the building codes, which are essential. Preparedness, we should ensure readiness before a disaster. For example, a cyclone warning is in place, then which area to be evacuated, where that person should be shifted, so that all should be thought of. This includes early warning systems, emergency plans and drills, and it strengthens the institutional and community capacity. Response, these are the actions taken during or immediately after the disaster, which focuses on search and rescue, emergency healthcare and relief. So it requires very strong coordination between all the organizations involved in relief operations. And lastly is the recovery and reconstruction. This is after a disaster, so to restore essential services, livelihood and infrastructure. So we have to always think this principle that build back better, so that in future if a similar disaster happens, then we are more resilient and reduce future risks. So key fields of action in DRR that we have already seen, that hazard and risk assessment, then there should be early warning system, public awareness is very important, and lastly multi-sectoral coordination. If the coordination fails, then even if the policy is very good or the scientific input is very good, you are not able to implement it on ground very properly. Starting with the global frameworks, so it all started with International Decade for Natural Disaster Reduction, that is IDNDR in 1989. Then in 1994 Yokohama Strategy and Plans of Action were in place. 1999 International Strategy for Disaster Reduction. Then in 2005 to 15 the Hyogo Framework for Action was in place, and 2015 to 30 the Sendai Framework is in place. So in 2030 it will be again revived to see what are the changes. So there are four priorities which are proposed under the Sendai Framework, that is understanding the risk, strengthening the disaster risk governance, investing in disaster reduction for resilience, and enhancing disaster preparedness for effective response. What are the key challenges which we face? That is, effective and uniform disaster information system is not there. So we have to maintain a uniform system. So this has to be across all scientific domains, that the system is uniform. Issues like finance, technology, human resource, etc., which affects the formation of such a system should be thought of. Lack of political commitment. Many a times this is a major issue in developing countries, because the countries are more fighting poverty, improving health, establishing basic infrastructure. To develop a effective DRR framework is very difficult for them. Increased risk, because due to climate change and human alterations like rapid urbanization, the risk of disasters, particularly urban floods and heat waves, have more escalated. Again, unplanned construction and town planning activities like slums are more and more created, so these have increased the riverine flood risk also. So these disasters are facing these challenges as well. Coming to the economics of disasters, so economics of disasters examines how disasters impact a country's economy, how investment in prevention, preparedness and recovery can mitigate losses. So these could be direct economic impacts, indirect impacts, and long-term systematic impacts are possible. Methodologies and sectorial impacts. So methodologies and tools, so they include catastrophe models, input-output models, macroeconomic models, disaster database and satellite data. Sector-wise impacts, they could impact tourism, they can increase the government spending, they can have a loss of agriculture production, they can disrupt remittances, and ultimately it will have a very large effect on the infrastructure as well. If we see globally what are the damages that have been caused, so we can see there are certain years. For example, this is 1994, and this particular is 2005, then this particular is 2011 and 2016. So you can see particularly after 2000 the disasters have become more frequent and relevant, where you can see disasters due to extreme temperatures, floods, then there are disasters due to storms. They have been more frequent. Coming to Indian case, so you can see this is coinciding with the world scenario. 1993 was the very severe disaster, where around close to 3% of GDP, that was the economic damage that was estimated. So you can see that was more due to flood. So in India, you can see flood related disasters and storms related disasters are more frequent than other disasters which are seen globally. Some of the cost estimates of the disaster that struck in India. So Bhuj 2001 earthquake, so close to 68,000 crore rupees of losses were there. Mumbai floods, close to 90,000 crores. 2014 Hudhud cyclone and JNK flood, this was the single costliest year with 1.45 lakh crore in losses. 2009 cyclone Fani and other flood events, close to 85,000 crores. 2023 cyclones Biparjoy, Michoang, Himachal Pradesh and Sikkim floods, close to 1.05 lakh crores. And so the figures are very alarming for us, that this much amount if we had, that could help us rebuild in a much better way, but this amount is getting lost in case of these disasters. Coming to the emergency and humanitarian response, so this involves rapid coordinated actions that saves lives, alleviate suffering and meet basic needs like food, shelter, water and health during crises like floods, conflicts or famines, which are followed by recovery efforts which focus on immediate and long-term rebuilding. So the objectives are, we should save lives as much as possible, we should provide early relief by providing food, water, shelter and medical care. We should prevent secondary disasters. For example, an area gets flooded, and if the flood water stays for a longer period of time, then there is a water contamination issue which is imminent and likely to be followed. Again, if cleaning is not taken place, then there could be epidemic like plague and etc. So we should maintain sanitation so that we avoid epidemic situation which are a secondary disasters. We should support recovery and rehabilitation, and we should protect dignity, where we should uphold human rights and equal access to aid irrespective of caste, creed, gender, influence, etc. What are the immediate survival needs? Water and food, then shelter, health and sanitation. We should restore communication, information, other essentials which are required, that should be provided for immediate survival. Now there are phases for disaster management. Before a disaster, we should focus on mitigation and preparedness. So where we develop preventive laws and legislations, we implement revised building codes, establish zoning requirements, we have insurance, and we construct barriers. Preparedness, where we have disaster supply kits, we have mutual aid agreements and plans, we trained person who will respond to such situation and will prepare backup shelters. During a disaster, response is very important. We have to search and rescue to identify affected people. We should assess initial damage, provide first aid and humanitarian response, and open and manage shelters. And recovery, this is after a disaster where debris removal is main challenge. Precise damage assessment so that they could be compensated. We should reconstruct the damaged infrastructure and restore livelihood and the community development. So this is what we saw, what we require actions before, after and during a disaster. So ultimate aim is, if we start with an early warning system, we could mitigate the disaster. If we make our search and rescue operation faster, we could save more lives, and we build a resilient community, so in future the disaster risk can be averted. So disaster management phase, the relief phase is very early, 3 to 14 days, where we provide relief and rescue operations. Then early recovery phase, that is 2 to 8 weeks, but there is an immediate phase where 0 to 72 hours we should focus on search and rescue operation, because that is a critical time. If we can save many lives in that, then of course there are some miracles which happen, that people tend to be rescued after even 10 days. In 2001 Bhuj earthquake, it was seen that some people survived almost a week. So that are some exceptional situation. Otherwise immediate response is more warranted. Coming to the institutional framework, so there are different frameworks specified for the national, state, district and local level, starting from NDMA, that is National Disaster Management Authority, and NIDM, they are at the national level. Then each state has its state disaster management authority, then you have the district disaster management authority, and then you have the local level authorities which are in place. Each of them have different roles and functions which are to be managed. So again, let us review the best practices for effective humanitarian response. So more and more community should participate. Of course, there are NDRF, SDRF teams, but in the larger interest, we require community participation. More NGOs come forward. There should be an integrated command center where all the agencies are centrally working. We should use more and more technology so that less human life is in danger. There should be gender and social inclusion, transparency and accountability, and lastly, we should build back better so that we are more resilient in to fight against the future disasters. Coming to the last part, disaster diplomacy. This involves disaster response and preparedness as a foreign policy to build goodwill, project soft power, strengthen international ties, and sometimes gain geopolitical advantages as well. So what are the key aspects? We can use humanitarian aid as a tool to foster positive relationship with the countries. We can project as a soft power by that gives us a positive image, like we had vaccine Maitri when there was COVID. India supplied large scale vaccines to many underdeveloped countries also. So today these countries are praising India like anything, where none other countries they had a vision where to serve others, because other countries were more concerned about their citizens, so they did not reach out to other countries. But India, as an exception, they reached out to several countries and provided vaccines for larger interest. So it is a strategic tool, it can be deployed where to achieve national interest, and scope, like wherever this disaster related activities where you want to prevent, mitigate, respond and reconstruction. In all these cases, we can extend disaster diplomacy. Some of the key missions which India has undertaken, that is Operation Neer in 2014. We provided fresh water, we rescued Maldives from freshwater crisis. Operation Maitri in Nepal, where we provide relief operations for following an earthquake. Then Operation Dost in 2023 in Turkey and Syria, where NDRF teams were deployed for search and rescue operations. Operation Brahma in Myanmar, where earthquake relief was provided, and the recent one is Operation Sagar Bandhu in Sri Lanka, where humanitarian response was provided to counter the fatalities and destruction caused by cyclone Ditwa. So highlights of this week's learning: scientific evidence helps us understand climate and disaster risk, and strong policies are essential to turn that knowledge into real world action. Main components of DRR include risk assessment, prevention and mitigation, preparedness, response and recovery, and reconstruction. Emergency and humanitarian response involves rapid coordinated efforts to save lives, alleviate suffering, and meet basic needs, followed by rescue efforts. And lastly, disaster diplomacy involves disaster response and preparedness as tools in foreign policy to build goodwill, project soft power, and strengthen international ties. So here's a glimpse before the learning exercise which we are going to do. We are going to formulate a heat action plan. So before that we'll understand the components of a heat action plan. We'll appraise the heat risk and vulnerability of India. We'll assess how this is going to change in future and review case studies on heat action plans of various Indian cities. So thank you for your attention. In the next lecture we'll have a learning exercise on formulating a heat action plan.